Admittedly, I love true stories in cinema, whether they be told through an autobiographical documentary account or inspired by true story type biographical depictions. Either interests me. But with this project, The Pope's Exorcist, I'm not really the biggest fan of exorcism stories. It's not really a field of or subgenre of horror that I'm circumstantial walking into horror, to be honest with you. I'm much more a thriller guy, but given that I'm a bit indifferent to the supernatural emphasis within a lot of today's horror cinema, and that's not just based on my faith. I've made no secret on this channel, I'm a Christian, so for me it's rather an uncomfortable viewing experience. But just even personally, I'm not really that invested in exorcism stories. Like, I just don't necessarily like to entertain them that much, or anything along the demon possession lines. It just gets to this feeling of being really, like, suffocatingly dark, in my opinion. Though I'm open to a horror tone, I like good stories. Possession ones are not really up my alley. So this is kind of an interesting space with The Pope's Exorcist. I understand it's very early on in its release. I don't think we even have a trailer yet. The closest thing we have is a featurette that debuted today, so it's still very much in early days of advertising. But I'm curious on it. Ralph Ineson's doing vocal work here, as well as Russell Crowe, I believe, portraying the main father in Showcase here. And I'm a big Russell Crowe fan. I like his acting generally from what I've seen in many of his projects he's been featured in, especially in the more serious lines. Let's take a look at this one and see what it looks like. Maybe I'll be more open to it when watching the story be fleshed out for a featurette. That can be quite interesting. You know, again, like I've said on this channel, I'm very well aware that trailers tend to be more universally engaging, but at this point we only have a featurette to go off of, and I like to get behind the scenes perspectives if I can. And so going into a trailer, perhaps eventually this will offer better information going in as an approach to get a better understanding for what the filmmaker's intents were, and more of an absorption with the story, which is based, like I said, on a true account. So if you're not familiar with the project, this is what it says according to the IMDb pitch. A portrayal of a real-life figure, Father Gabriele Amorth, a priest who acted as chief exorcist of the Vatican, who performed more than 100,000 exorcisms in his lifetime and lived to tell a story, I guess. He passed away in 2016 at the age of 91. That's sad. Amorth wrote two memoirs. An Exorcist tells his story, and An Exorcist more stories, and detail his experiences battling Satan and demons that had clutched people in their evil. I mean, that would be quite the experience if you were a Catholic father, I would imagine. Right, in church, and you have all these people that come to you citing some sort of demon possession in their lives, or maybe others bring people into the company of somebody. For me, it's just like, again, I look at this project, and while I'm open to true stories, and this one at some level does fascinate me, I'm just not the biggest fan of exorcism stories. It's the same reason I don't like to watch films, for example, no matter how well they're spoken of, the Conjuring movies. I'm not a fan of that series. But again, I can say that they're competently made. I haven't seen maybe a couple of clips, but I don't necessarily want to entertain the projects in full. So this project, because it is labeled on IMDb as being a horror and thriller project, I think it's going to tap more into that depiction. I'm curious to see how far it goes, if it's going to be more so on the priest's experience, or if it's going to... How is it going to materialize? Is this going to be more so like a depiction of what's articulated in both memoirs? I mean, that I find kind of fascinating, like almost it's a book adaptation in a way, but it really is like inspired by a true story. But how far is it going to dip into that and the priest's experiences more than the experiences themselves in terms of a showcase? Like, how approachable will it be as a project? Because I'm curious to learn more about this father, but I don't know what I'm going to be sitting through. Let's gauge it. All right, first featurette. Let's get an introduction for it before we even have a trailer. I'm okay with that.
In this film,
I'm sure that'll come eventually.
Father Gabriele Amorth.
I am the chief exorcist of the Vatican. My position was appointed by the Pope.
It was actually a real job in the Vatican. The majority of cases do not require an exorcism.
98% are recommended by him to doctors and
good depiction.
Psychiatrists.
The other 2%, I call it...
It's inviting so far.
He was a very controversial character. He performed thousands of exorcisms and had not only done it for 36 years, but had documented the things that he'd experienced. If evil does not exist, what then is the role of the church? He discovered some of the...
That's a good line.
The Catholic Church.
I wonder if they pulled that from the memoir, if that's adapted into the script.
Buried the truth here. It's It's a very dark pursuit, and his faith gave him a certain level of courage to do the job.
Whatever you do, you only do because God allows it.
Did he allow that?
We are getting closer to hell.
Well, we'll see. It's a good depiction. High quality. I expect that with Russell Crowe projects, especially along the more dramatic lines. And for a story as serious as this one, there is a level of charm to it on the grounds of I would like to learn more about this father's experiences. Especially how, like I said, he lived to tell his story for, what did they say, 36 years of performing exorcisms, like 100,000? How would anybody last through that? I mean, you're having to... That takes an amount of courage and, I guess, a true godly devotion, to be honest with you. Because demon possession, I mean, the Bible speaks on it. It's a real thing. But 100,000 cases, like, do we have that much activity in the world today? Or perhaps. How would one person bear that? I mean, I would imagine there's some serious detoxing that takes place. Like, I've had my fill after a week's service. Like, I'm going to take a sabbatical now, and we'll come back later. But, you know, does the supernatural world allow for such breaks? I mean, that's just crazy to me. 100,000, wow. As an experience. And he lived for 90 years strong doing that. Well, not for 90 years, but 36 of those years. It's quite the story. Depiction-wise, we'll see. Again, I don't tend to watch films along the exorcism lines, so... I find it tempting on wanting to learn about this man's story at a greater depth, but I'm not sure I want to entertain the project in full, necessarily in a theater sitting, if it gets to be a point of being too disturbing. While I can say the scenes are very well filmed and depicted, and from what I've seen in examining certain possession type stories, it's faithful. It follows a pattern of a lot of other projects that are very serious in their depictions on such subject matters, but I'm just not sure how much I want to welcome without feeling like I'm entertaining watching evil spirits myself. Again, it's just really uncomfortable, you know? So, accessibility-wise in this project, I'm not necessarily sure if this is going to have mass appeal. There are probably others like me who are like, I can't stomach certain type stories, so you might like scare or ambiances from time to time in your cinema preferences and your viewing. I'm just not sure that Pope's Exorcist is a story I would want to entertain in a theater. Maybe it's a home watch, yes, if I can fast forward, if it gets to a point of being too disturbing, though I can still say, to be as respectful as I can, those scenes are very competently depicted. I'd like to hear your thoughts down below on this project. Again, it's a bit of an unusual pattern in the way I'm approaching it, in that we only have a featurette first and not a full trailer. I'm assuming one will be coming at some point. Or maybe they'll just stick with the featurette. This did enough for me, if that's all they had. I'd be okay with it. April 14th, though, so we might get a trailer around in March at some point. That makes sense. We'll see. If there is anything else released, I will take a deeper look at it. And like I said, I'd love to hear your perspectives down below. I'm sure there'll be a mixture of opinion on it. I'm very well aware that there are plenty of people in the horror landscape, or horror fan landscape, that love supernatural cinema. I get it. Just some of us are not necessarily like, we're all gung-ho to watch a project like that. So a demon possession story in some level. I'm interested to see maybe the balance of depiction, if it focuses more so on his life and his experiences with or after carrying those out, or amid wrestling them. And some depiction, I guess, is necessary to be clear on that. And maybe then you have a sort of like a 50-50 balance. I don't know. Well, we'll see. I think if I do entertain this project, it will be maybe on streaming or at home if it releases that way in the future. Maybe not necessarily theater seating, but I will keep a doorway open for a trailer if there's anything else released to give it a second look. But on a featurette, I can certainly say it's a competent project that on story and on acting from Russell Crowe is somewhat, even amid my concerns, attractive. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.